YouTube Frogs, second half of 3.1 Genshin is out, which finally means the arrival of our newest 5-star Hydro Sword user, Nilou. In this video, I'm really excited to provide my first impressions and general gameplay review of our Serene Lotus Dancer, breaking down how her kit works, how I'd recommend to build her, and showcasing her gameplay. Quick disclaimer, footage in this video was recorded early on the media server prior to official release. Alright, let's dive right into it. Nilou's base design is a unique combination of a dual stance elemental skill and enhanced bloom enabling kit. Her elemental skill allows her to choose between an on-field carry stance and an off-field application stance, allowing for a mix of DPS and supportive playstyles. With HP scaling multipliers and HP scaling passive talents, Nilou is the first support of her design, synergizing unique bloom reactions with her HP and elemental mastery. Normal attack, charge attack. This is the only portion of Nilou's kit which scales off of attack multipliers, so this talent is effectively useless. Her elemental skill provides her a separate set of multipliers that go into effect during any of her pre-stance or in-stance actions. And also defined within her elemental skill, any damage dealt related to her elemental stance is considered elemental skill damage and not normal attack damage, rendering set bonuses like 4-piece Heart of Depth not useful. This is, for example, different than characters like Tartak or Ayato, whose elemental skill-based stance changes still scale off of normal attack damage. Elemental skill, Dance of Haft-Karsvar. Nilou initiates her stance choosing state for 10 seconds as noted by the aura above her head, dealing hydro damage to enemies around her. In this state, her next 3 actions activated from her elemental skill or her left click normal attack deal hydro damage and generate 1 hydro particle. Elemental skill becomes a whirling step, and normal attacks become sword dance. Activating her stance, the first E, also generates 1 to 2 hydro particles for a total of 4 to 5 hydro particles in the first phase. The last action, noted by the full Lotus aura, determines her elemental skill's second phase. Elemental skill or whirling step as the last action activates her off-field stance Tranquility aura for 12 seconds, continuously applying hydro while dealing 0 damage. While this aura procs very frequently, about twice per second, reapplication of hydro only occurs once every 2 seconds. This is more evident when demonstrated with Ayaka, who is able to remove the aura with freeze. Using normal attack or sword dance as the last action activates her on-field stance Lunar Prayer for 8 seconds, causing all her normal attacks to be sword dance and luminous illusion attacks. The multipliers for these are all defined within her elemental skill talent and scale with her HP. During these 8 seconds, Nilou is able to fire off 5 full sets of N3, combining with her initial stance choosing state. This can include another full set of N3 for 6 total. At level 6, N3 by 6 totals for 141.4% max HP damage. No matter which stance is selected, Nilou's elemental skill cooldown totals for 18 seconds. This counts down immediately after her very first activation before a stance is even chosen. So that means that Tranquility Aura then effectively has a 4 to 5 second downtime, and Lunar Prayer has about an 8 to 9 second downtime. Elemental Burst, Dance of Abzindegi. Upon activation, Nilou deals AoE hydro damage in a fairly large circle around her, leaving behind a mark that detonates after about 2.5 seconds, dealing another instance of single target hydro damage to enemies marked. That's it. The 2.5 second mark detonation easily indicates precise timing for another application of hydro to enemies affected. With an 18 second cooldown and 70 energy cost, Nilou's burst is her side ability and used strictly for more damage and 2 more instances of hydro application. Passive talents. So both Ascension 1 and Ascension 4 passives tie her kit together and are responsible for bringing those enhanced blooms to life. Ascension 1 enables these cores to generate, which pop nearly instantly and have much larger AoEs. These blooms cannot proc Hyper Bloom or Burgeon. Ascension 1 does require the team to only be Dendro and Hydro, with at least one of each, and these cores only start generating after Nilou's third dance step, which chooses her stance. Notice in this demo, the first blooms produced by Barbara and DMC do not have the enhanced effects and thus take much longer to pop in comparison to the enhanced ones. During this 30-second period where the Golden Chalice bounty is active, all party members will gain 100 element mastery when they are hit by Dendro attacks. This basically means when the blooms self-damage you, you'll gain 100 EM. With her Ascension 4 passive, these bountiful cores scale off of Nilou's max HP when above 30,000 at a rate of 1,000 per 9%. With an average level 90 Nilou at 50,000 HP, this would improve the core damage by 180% out of the cap of 400%. To achieve this cap, Nilou would need about 74,000 HP. Now for her talent priority, I find that her elemental skill is the only ability that really matters. All of her significant multipliers are locked to the skill, with 2 extra instances of hydro damage available with her burst. So if you want to cheap out, you can honestly leave her burst and her normal attack at level 1. But for a full recommendation, I'd go elemental skill over elemental burst, and the normal attack is useless. So, that's a breakdown of what to expect from her kit. A grand overview at Constellation 0 describes her as a bloom buffing HP scaling support responsible for consistent hydro application behind a low maintenance elemental skill. As you may have noticed, Nilou's Ascension 4 passive introduces a unique conversion that buffs a transformative reaction, Bloom, by a non-elemental mastery stat, HP. This buff affects any bountiful cores created by any of her team members, which then stacks with the EM of whatever teammate procs the Bloom. So essentially, Nilou's max HP acts as her pool of elemental mastery, while simultaneously scaling into her raw elemental skill and elemental burst multipliers. This then reduces the complexity of her stat requirements to only needing HP, and then optional energy recharge for burst, and optional elemental mastery for when she's the one proccing Bloom. After these stats then, if you're able to pick up some crit rate crit damage, they are completely extra credit, as they only affect Nilou's raw multipliers and not the bountiful core damage. So our stat priority at Constellation 0 looks like so. HP over energy recharge and EM over crit rate crit damage. Bloom reactions additionally scale with character level, and then Nilou's personal multipliers also scale with hydro damage and elemental skill damage. If you're aiming to have relatively easy burst uptime, her 70 energy burst cost feels comfortable on a 180 to 200% recharge amount. Strict 100% burst uptime is absolutely not necessary though, since the majority of her damage and hydro application comes from her elemental skill. Now, let's take a look at my preliminary weapon choices. So for these, note that her Aura Stance, which is off-field, does 0 innate damage, but it can proc blooms. Therefore, if you're running her off-field, she wants HP and elemental mastery, with energy recharge if you want to burst frequently. If you don't care about her burst uptime, then her weapon honestly doesn't matter at all, as she only cares about HP and elemental mastery. For the Sword Stance, which is on-field, she can do a combination of damage from blooms and her personal HP scaling multipliers. Therefore, she's more okay with the mixed DPS options that provide both utility and a little DPS. First, a look at her signature, Key of Kajnasut. It has low base attack, very high HP % secondary stat, and a passive that converts her HP to elemental mastery for herself and her team. At R1, the effect at 3 stacks grants 0.36% max HP to elemental mastery, or 50,000 HP is about 180 elemental mastery. The team buff, which goes into effect at max stacks, is 0.2% max HP, or 50,000 HP goes to 100 elemental mastery for the team. So this signature weapon is very clearly tailored for Nilou, giving a massive HP % boost from both the secondary and the passive, and converting that HP to both Team Elemental Mastery and Self-EM. But it does require 3 hits from the Elemental skill. So because of the huge HP % boost as well as a Self and Team Elemental Mastery buff, this weapon is optimal for both stances of Nilou's Elemental skill, whether you're doing off-field or on-field. Now, you'll notice that this weapon is very niche. The only other sword user who makes value of this weapon is Cookie. Those who aren't aiming to pull for the signature can look to the following other options. For our 5 stars, we have Freedom Swarm. This is for the Aura Stance only. It has the highest Elemental Mastery secondary stat out of any weapon, but its passive only grants normal charge plunging bonus and attack % bonus, which do not benefit Bloom related reactions. She will need to proc the Bloom reaction herself to make use of this elemental mastery. Now, the other 5-star weapons are pure DPS based, including the Jade Cutter, which in my opinion does not fit well with her build path at Constellation 0. However, if you're strictly looking to stack HP % without the want of a new weapon, Jade Cutter is perfectly fine for that. 4-star weapons. So for Nilou, there are no 4-star weapon options that provide HP %, which is her most valuable stat. So instead, weapon choice can supplement team utility in the forms of recharge or elemental mastery. If you're running a recharge weapon, you'll probably be aiming to activate her burst every rotation or as close as possible, as you'll likely be hitting anywhere between 160 to 200% recharge. Weapons in this category include Vonia's Sword. This is sword stance only, because you'll need a minimal crit rate to be able to activate this passive consistently, which is not as viable on Aura Stance since the Aura does no damage to proc. Burst every rotation is very easy with this weapon because you'll be generating particles as well as the high recharge. Sacrificial Sword. This is for both stances. It's very easy to reset the cooldown given the 3 pre-stance hits and the 15 sword stance hits. Its high recharge and double the usage of elemental skill means bursting every rotation is also very easy. Sacrificial Sword also allows you to have both Aura Stance and Sword Stance active at the same time if you wish. Festering Desire. This is for Sword Stance only. It's a mixed recharge and damage-oriented weapon given from the event in 1.2. Those of you who still have this weapon will have an easy choice to test out her Sword Stance playstyle. This passive is fully used as all of her stance damage is considered elemental skill damage. Not shown, Sapwood Blade. Aura Stance only. So while this weapon can be used in Sword Stance, the main value comes from its reaction-based Elemental Mastery passive that can exist off-field, which is clearly more optimal for her Aura Stance. Now, here's what we have for Elemental Mastery-based 4 stars. Iron Sting. This is Aura Stance only, and it's a pure Elemental Mastery stat stick for her off-field playstyle. Alley Flash. This is also Aura Stance only, and it's basically a worse version of Iron Sting because she doesn't care about the base attack and it has lower Elemental Mastery. And then not shown, upcoming new weapon, Xiphos' Moonlight. I don't know how to pronounce that. This weapon can be used in both stances, but I feel like it's better in the Aura stance over the Sword stance. This weapon has a unique conversion from Elemental Mastery to Energy Recharge, which is stackable if you have multiple weapons in the same type. Since this weapon is preferred on characters who stack like pure EM, for example like Kazuha, Nilou doesn't benefit too much from it. Because she stacks HP percent, her Elemental Mastery with this weapon will probably hover at about 250, meaning she'll only be gaining 9% recharge from this weapon and about 3% for her teammates. And because this weapon is Elemental Mastery oriented, it is preferred on Aura stance. Finally, 3-star weapons. So, here's the thing. I'm personally not a fan of Harbinger of Dawn because her enhanced Bloom playstyle damages the user quite heavily. Can this be mitigated with healing? Yes. However, Harbinger of Dawn only benefits her own Hydro damage and not her Bloom damage, so this is a sword stance only weapon. Even so, I find a lot more general value using the energy recharge weapons that also grant utility. So, use at your own risk. Alright, now let's get into artifact setups. So Nilou is actually probably the most flexible when it comes to artifact setups. This is because there is currently no full 4-star set that provides universal value greater than a generic 2-piece combo. 4-piece Tenacity is completely useless as our enhanced blooms do not benefit from attack or shielding strength. Therefore, these are what I would prioritize for 2-piece sets. 2-piece Tenacity, 20% HP, best in both stances. 2-piece Heart of Depth, 50% Hydro, only for the sword stance because it's only Hydro damage. 2-piece Gilded or Wanderer's Troop, 80 Elemental Mastery. This is for Aura stance only for the blooms. 2-piece Noblesse. This is 20% burst. It's available for both stances if you care about burst uptime. 2-piece Emblem, 20% recharge. This is also for both stances for the same reason. So any of these combos that includes 2-piece Tenacity will perform pretty close to each other. Aiming for substats that maximize your type of playstyle is most important. Energy Recharge up to 180 plus if you value her burst. Elemental Mastery if you prefer her Aura stance off-field playstyle. And as much HP percent for her raw multiplier and bloom damage scaling from Ascension 4. Now how about main stat choices? Again, probably one of the most simple build paths for a Constellation 0 character. Because HP percent double dips into both her multipliers and bloom core damage, she doesn't really get impact from diminishing returns like other characters. That being said, her Ascension 4 passive does have a cap of 74,000 HP for 400% of this bloom damage. But the average player will not easily be able to achieve that much HP. So, therefore, main stat builds can be simplified to the following. If you're running the signature key, triple HP is the ignore burst uptime build, only focusing on elemental skill and highest HP level. You can opt for an energy recharge timepiece, which is the other option if you want for burst uptime focus, in which you'll probably aim for 180% recharge or higher, getting additional substats from the other pieces. If you're running any of the energy recharge weapons, just go triple HP. Burst uptime is optional. You don't have to force 180% if you can't get there. It's the simplest build path. Elemental Mastery weapons. Same thing with the signature key. You have energy recharge or HP for the timepiece and then double HP. Energy recharge if you want burst uptime, and this is an off-field focus build. So you guys can see she probably has one of the easiest build paths with her one-dimensional stat layout and flexibility with 2-piece sets. Alright, time for a gameplay showcase. She'll be running the old-time Festering Desire level 90 with 2-piece Tenacity and 2-piece Heart of Depth set with triple HP percent main stat pieces. Her stat distribution is focused on maximize HP with additional recharge and a little bit of elemental mastery, sacrificing the crit rate and crit damage. Currently sitting at 46,000 HP, at level 90 she'll easily reach 50k plus and sustaining 215% recharge. My talents do sit at 166, but don't really matter since we're watching the bloom damage. So here's the thing about Nilou, it's that her A1 passive, which activates these bountiful cores, only goes into effect after she completes her triple dance and goes into either aura or sword stance. This means that the very first rotation is sacrificed for weaker blooms if you're running the sword stance, since setup must happen first before she enters that stance. Alternatively, her rotation can be initiated with Aura Stance, leading with Elemental Skill ×4, activating her A1 first and then swapping out for team setup. This is only a problem for the first rotation though, since the buff continues for 30 seconds and is refreshed upon another completed dance. For current team comps, her A1 requirement of Hydro and Dendro forces a specific layout and requires specific characters. For our Dendro units, we only have DMC and Kale. The Signari is rolled out as a spread DPS. The most F2P oriented composition surrounding these involves Barbara as the last slot, unlocking double Hydro and adding a healer. Unfortunately, since blooms hurt the active character, some form of healing is a must since these enhanced blooms pop very quickly and with large AoE. using this type of composition, the blooms are mixed between Nilou popping them and DMC popping them. I've opted my DMC to be on Deepwood with pure elemental mastery and recharge for burst uptime, and found out the rotation to be very easy and stable with Nilou being on her HP build. However, it is instantly clear that we don't have the proper units to make Nilou truly shine and maximize her high efficiency bloom explosions. Besides this, we are pretty restricted to team compositions. In order to guarantee that the Dendro unit blooms, I found that triple Hydro and solo Dendro to work quite efficiently. In this setup, I've opted for Yelan to replace Kale, as her burst procs during Nilou's sword stance, applying massive amounts of Hydro to the enemies. This basically guarantees that DMC will proc bloom and maximizes the bloom damage, as she benefits not only from her own elemental mastery, but also from Nilou's A4 bloom increase damage that affects the whole party. Personally, I'm a fan of this composition the most, but it does still suffer from mobility issues as DMC's burst is stationary. Now, what about team comps that ignore her Ascension 1 passive? So her utility is definitely within her aura stance. It's able to apply Hydro within a range every 2 seconds off field. However, she loses both her A1 and A4 passive if any other element besides Hydro or Dendro is introduced. So basically, she becomes like a movable Kokomi, but with no damage and no healing. Because of this, in my opinion, her design fits her build path the best, despite feeling so restrictive at the current state of our characters. So, what do I think of Nilou? I personally love her unique dual stance design and aesthetics, and will C6R5 her despite my dislike for how her signature weapon looks. However, it is very clear at the current state that Nilou is not composition friendly for a lot of players. She favors hyper-specific characters and shines the more investment you put into her. Great for whales and collectors alike, but maybe not so much for budget and conservative gamers looking for the most value out of their primo gems. Nilou is definitely one of those characters who I believe will shine brighter with possibly new characters that fit her playstyle. The potential for her enhanced bloom is there, we just need units that can capitalize on them. For now, those are my first impressions for C0 Nilou. Keep your eyes peeled for an upcoming guide on the rest of Nilou's kit. Good luck to those summoning, and I hope that all Nilou wanters become Nilou havers. Thanks as always for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you next time. Take care.